and you tend to start a bit closer, so it'll almost always land before it's finished eating. And the bigger predators make a splendidly gushy noise when they explode, raining down their featureless, thick outer shells. And the worm heads on, momentarily making this the safest passage in the entire chamber. It destroys all predators in its way, and if it's currently holding one, then it will break apart all the rest, which makes it really hard to apply webs to predators out in the open, since it probably won't be the first one the worm hits, in which case it'll get destroyed and the web glyph will not survive. The sound cue for when it's on the move, and there, the sound cue for when it picks it up are really clear, so once it's picked something up, you know you're pretty much out of harm's way, since we only start taking damage when we're being chewed up, and not when we're collided with. We are a bouncy, rubbery soul, and here I was waiting at the furthest end from it, but I'll still have enough time to run up and draw my glyph, trying to use the colour that it's vulnerable to, but its wheel doesn't turn very fast at all. And now it's vulnerable to emerald. That worked out very nicely. Yeah. I seem to have been picked up. I did not know you could get picked up whilst the worm was not moving. I was intending to show this off in a bonus episode, but I could not predict what would happen, so here we go. Apparently the area at which it can pick you up is huge, and I can only assume the munching noise is it trying to get through my ghostly outer layer into the many wells of colour that lie beneath. And we get quite inexplicably dumped back at the entrance. Because I had all this emerald in me, it didn't cause that much damage in total. Could have been quite serious. It's one of the more interesting ones to get snatched by. Ah, I'm getting pummeled with chunks. Great, I was waiting to confirm that. It looks like it pops out to feed from the same hole which it runs into after each venture, forage. You can get as close as you want to it while it's feeding, so I now recommend that you go to the fork that it isn't about to head down. Thinking about it, that's probably just common sense, but battling giant worms is no time to be using common sense. And I now know that it wavers around for quite a bit, giving you ample time to move aside and plan your next move. And looking down the passage, we see that some predators have set up residence and are making their way out. The worm destroys too many of them, so they have to constantly respawn in the only two areas of the chamber that are safe. So, really, I suppose, no areas of the chamber are safe. If you're waiting in the mouth of the tunnel, they can spawn in behind you and bunch you up against the worm or just attack you unawares. I don't want to waste my colour, so I'm just going to have to sidestep them. But if you get within a certain range, they will be able to attack you, no matter what you do. And after the first attack, they give you a little distance prod that will send you flying. And now they lose interest. I can't remember if I've shown that off before or not. Oh, those chunks are flying this way, it's going to come down here and I'm going to have to retrace my steps and run back into the predator I was escaping from. That was close, only a minuscule safety space. The worm could have picked me up from the side. It has a really wide jaw, or the developers just didn't want you to be able to sidestep out the way. Although there is one spot, I'll show it when I'm not so hemmed in. It must be down the far side. It's basically a triangle of tunnels, so it's not going to take care of any of these predators for me. Phew, I was lucky. Although now I've got no idea where it's going to come out. So I'm just going to duck and weave on the off chance it actually does something. It must be feeding. Oh, it must have stopped feeding. Have some of this. Pitiful. Not only because I was merely painting colour onto its hardened exoskeleton, but I also used crimson, which, as we all know, is Ailey's favourite, and I'm in one of Ailey's chambers. And according to Ema, and more importantly my journal, it should be less effective. I think I may have just got myself trapped again. We're good, we're good. Where's the worm going to come from now? It's invulnerable, so it's not out yet. Here she comes. It's going to come out to feed here, so I've got to make sure I don't get swarmed. Ah, steady on. Yeah, as I said, it doesn't bite you if it's already got something in its mouth, so it's kind of phased straight through me here. Its outside is usually nice and solid. Ah, what? It's actually landing on top of me here. How could the other predator be closer? It doesn't pick up any more predators immediately after it's finished feeding, so that other violet is definitely going to go to waste. That did not do a lot of damage. It didn't have much more to go before it knocked off that outer wheel. And now it's only vulnerable to silver, which I have none of. I suppose I could farm from these predators, but I can't really be bothered. At least the worm cleans up after it's finished feeding. You can't buy or steal good manners. Particularly when you have a never-ending food supply. Is this worm subject to the same hunger as everything else in the void? Possibly, although it's probably running on auto, like a zombie. It just eats what gets in its way, and I do realise how screwed I'd have been if the worm had come up behind me. It should come out over there, so I'll just make sure nothing's in my way. We're all good. And what did I just say about standing in front of it whilst trying to web? They can spawn in here too. Oh, looks like my torch is still going, even if it's just a really weak area. I swear that bar did not move. That's just distressing. It's kinda cruel to make it vulnerable to silver for half the fight, when silver is least effective. There are many and varied reasons why this fight is the hardest of all the giant predator fights, but there is a way to cheese it, as I'm going to show off now. If you walk back to the entrance and exit, you will reset the entire room. You'll remember when we first entered, there was a predator hanging out just outside the entrance tunnel, completely oblivious, whilst roaring almost exactly like that went on in the background. The next thing you know, it had been snatched up by a giant worm. The stage was set, the match was on. Well, we get the same effective introduction every time that we enter the chamber, which means that if we run up and tag the first predator, we get a hit off immediately. I also checked my stats then. I'm in surprisingly good nick, having been knocked around a couple of times. I seem to have got the excess violet eaten more than anything else, which is a useful thing to know. The colour that isn't used to buff you gets eaten first. As long as you have Azure, you'll have plenty of time to apply the full 40 droplets. If the second wheel is still up there, then the colour on the far left should be highlighted by the time the strike hits, so it's easy to get maximum damage. So there are no downsides to this. The room resets itself every time you enter, so you can lather, apply,